Hi, great to be here. So I come to you from Berlin, Germany, and my country can be characterized as this tension between two opposing forces. So one is the stereotypical pragmatist, efficient, and the other one is the soul-searching romantic. Now, it's taking me 40 years to figure it out, and my wife still disputes it, but I finally found out, a romantic. I believe the world would be a better place if we had more romance in our lives. And I believe we must find it and create it in and through business. However, it's not easy. And you could argue that never before has it been so difficult to be a romantic. And at the same time, never before has it been so important. And it's particularly true with an eye on the age of AI and exponential technology. We all know that the fourth industrial revolution is going to change everything, right? The workforce, our society, and I'm not going to bore you with details to all the various forecasts, but suffice to say there are two camps. One basically says if you can describe your job in one sentence, then chances are you're not going to have one much longer. Which is to say anything that is linear, process-driven, monotonous, not ambiguous is very prone to automation. Andrew McAfee, who belongs to the other camp from MIT, is more nuanced, and he says, nah, AI is not going to replace humans, but humans who can work with AI are going to replace those humans who can't. Now, for me, the bigger question is actually, what will the machines do to our being human? What will it mean to be human in an age of machines? And the fear I have is that in our effort to catch up with ever smarter and more efficient machines, that we become smart machines ourselves. And that we use technology such as censoring technology and implant it as microchips into the bodies of our workers to track every single one of their moves. And that we use artificial emotional intelligence, which is becoming smarter at reading and understanding our emotions. And that we use it for the so-called quantified workplace, where there are rather obscure apps like this one called Don't Worry, Be Happy. It scans your facial expressions at the workplace. If you stop smiling, if you stop being happy while performing a task, it deletes all the progress you made over the past hour. So it's one way to motivate your employees, obviously. And this obsession with this optimization of everything, including ourselves, has infiltrated the most intimate aspects of our lives. Spreadsheets is an app that promises users to enhance their sexual performance based on data analytics. Breakup text lets you send automated breakup text messages. And soon we might indeed be falling in love with an AI that is becoming adept at manipulating our emotions. So the New York Times wrote about the movie Her by Spike Jonze. The great question is not whether machines will be able to think. The bigger question is, will we humans still be able to feel? And indeed, when everything is optimized, made convenient and predictable, then where do we find these profound experiences that punctuate our routines? Where is the unexpected? Where is the magic? Where is the strangeness? Are we at risk of engineering the romance out of our lives? Now, we've been at a point of similar disenchantment before, and that was 200 years ago when the original Romantic movement, remember Lord Byron, Keats, the British and Romantic poets, when they revolted against the regime of the Enlightenment, against the regime of practical reason. They thought it was too narrow to capture the expansive richness of the human soul. And I believe that we're now in a similar moment of disenchantment, that we are on the cusp of a new romantic era, that we need a new romantic revolution. This time in response to the disenchantment caused by the optimization of everything. And I believe that you and I can be the new meaning makers, the new poets of our time. Because romance is what makes us human against the backdrop of AI and automation. And romance is also the ultimate differentiator when everybody else is just scaling efficiencies and maximizing and optimizing. Now, Jack Ma, the chairman of Alibaba, said as much in a remarkable appearance at the World Economic Forum earlier this year in Davos, when he said, let's not even try to compete with the machines on their turf. We're going to lose. Let's rather invest in those qualities that are inherently human. And he even in Davos spoke about love. So as machines take our jobs and do them more efficiently, soon the most important work for us humans, if not the only remaining work for us humans, is the kind of work that must be done beautifully rather than efficiently. But how do you do that? How do you work, live, lead beautifully in an age of machines? I'd like to propose 3 rules. I call them the rules of enchantment, the rules of business romantics that might help you do so. First, do the unnecessary. So I once worked at a company that was the result of a merger of a large IT outsourcing company with 9,000 software developers, mostly based in India, and 1,000 creative types, designers on the West Coast in the US. And to unify these vastly different cultures, we were going to launch a 3rd new brand, and the new brand color was going to be orange. And we were going through the budget in the launch plan, and then we realized that there was a budget item, the purchase of 10,000 orange balloons, which we had meant to distribute to all staff worldwide. And we decided to cut it because it seemed cute, unnecessary, and as the CFO pointed out, not mission critical. So we cut the balloons, and we didn't know back then that our decision to cut the balloons marked the beginning of the end, that these 2 organizations would never become one. And sure enough, that merger eventually failed. Now, was it because there weren't any orange balloons? No, not entirely, but the kill the orange balloons mentality permeated everything else. You might not always realize it, but when you cut the unnecessary, you cut everything. To lead with beauty means to rise above what is merely necessary. So do not kill your orange balloons. Like someone who knew this really well is Steve Jobs. I worked at Frog Design for 8 years, and I heard all these stories about Steve Jobs because we worked with him in the 80s. And one was that he insisted that the interior of the computers were designed with the same love, care, and rigor as the exterior. He said customers don't see it, but they can feel it. Now, perhaps the most radically unnecessary thing that one can do as a brand is to actually actively advise customers not to buy your product. It's precisely what Patagonia did, the outdoor clothing company, when it placed ads in leading newspapers in the US at the height of US shopping season, basically saying, don't buy this jacket. It was a radical stance against consumerism, in keeping with the values of the brand, which is all about fighting the climate crisis. And it's not just a cheap PR stunt, because Patagonia also sends trucks to all parts of the US, offering customers to get their clothes fixed or exchanged before buying new ones. So it's really a purpose-driven organization, and maybe this can be best captured by this quote by Alfred Kercher, a German entrepreneur. Our customers and employees are not staying with us because of what we do, but because of who we are. In a time of increased complexity and accelerated change, staying true to your values is perhaps the only sustainable competitive advantage. Business are the great, if not the only remaining meaning makers of our time. And they're also the great socializers, which brings us to rule number 2, create intimacy. Now, I've come across a study a couple of years ago that, that said that the average American has only 1 close friend. Now, you can reflect on how many close friends you actually have. And I say this because the numbers have been deteriorating in Europe as well over the years. Sociologists speak of an age of loneliness, an age of social isolation. The UK has created a minister for loneliness. And isn't that astonishing, given the fact that we've never been more connected, we've never been more communicative than in this point in history? We check our smartphone 80 times a day on average. How many of you have checked your smartphone since I began my talk? Okay, somehow on the souls. So how is that possible? Well, the writer Richard Bach has an explanation. He says the opposite of loneliness is not togetherness, it's not being connected, it's intimacy. And we are in dire need for more intimacy in these digital times. So much so that there are already very strange business models popping up serving that need, like this one in Los Angeles called people walking. So for $30, you can rent a stranger who walks with you for a few miles. It's the Uber for humans, if you will. It's sad, but it also points out there's a desire for this. And so how do we design for intimacy, and who can we learn from? Artists. Artists are very good at that. Take Marina Abramović, one of the most famous performance artists. She held an exhibition in New York City called The Artist is Present. And that's exactly what she was. She was present for 700 hours, 5 minutes, a visitor at a time. She just sat across from each other, and they were looking into each other's eyes silently, tolerating and celebrating the kind of time that is thick rather than lean and efficient. And it's exactly that notion of thick time, of thick presence that's now entering the business mainstream as well. For one, in the form of mindfulness programs, but also in the form of more radical formats such as silent dinners. So I took part in one a few months ago in Berlin, and I've seen several awkward things in my business life, but spending 90 minutes silently with 30 predominantly male German business executives over dinner was one of the most awkward experiences I've ever had. But it was also beautiful because they dropped their mask, they let down their guard, and it was just a beautiful moment. I think we're craving to be treated as unique, individual, subjective human beings, not as the targets of algorithmic recommendation engines. We don't want personalized experiences. We want personal experiences. And one brand that is very good at that is Airbnb. Now, of course, on the one hand, a big part of their success is that they're a super sophisticated, data-based matchmaking engine. But on the other hand, at the very heart of their brand promise lies a romantic premise, which is to not know what's going to happen behind that door, to step into the life of a stranger. So Airbnb is very smart, yes, but also utterly romantic. Intimacy is all about breaking down barriers. And that's what this organization did. Bertzorg. It's a Dutch caregiving collective. And they did something radical a few years ago. They removed all manager-level positions, all hierarchy, all job titles. And instead, they formed small teams of nurses and gave them the mandate to do whatever was in the best interest of the patient, the customer. Two things happened. They've grown tremendously. They're very successful. Second, the cost per customer actually went down. So they've become more effective. They made better decisions. Why? Because they no longer only relied on abstract, segmented data, but intuitive, intimate customer relationships. Now the question is, of course, with intimacy, is it possible to experience intimacy between man and machine? We know from research that yes, actually we humans very quickly form emotional attachment to robots. And in Japan and in other markets, we now see a rise of robots used in elderly care or for mental health treatment. And I believe that's really interesting. What is human is to experience intimacy. Whether it comes from a machine or from another human is maybe secondary. What does matter is, though, in order to experience intimacy, we need to be vulnerable. And that is rule number 3. Suffer a little. That's counter to the way we design most workplace and customer experiences, isn't it? Because most of them are designed for instant gratification, convenience, ease of use, comfort. Amazon, of course, being the poster boy, which will soon deliver everything our heart can possibly desire to our doorstep via drones. In Japan, you can already order a priest through the Amazon platform. And yet, why is it that at the same time, despite all the convenience, we climb up the mountaintops of the Alps to see the leading bikers of the Tour de France fly by in 10, 15 seconds? Why do thousands of people participate in this phenomenon called ice swimming, where they jump into ice-cold water in cities worldwide at the same time? Why do more than 50,000 people embark on this annual pilgrimage to the Burning Man Festival, the Black Rock Desert in Nevada, celebrating a week long of radical self-expression and essentially losing control? Yes, this is a nice quote by Lila Davachi. We say we want more time, but what we really want is more memories. But that's not all that is going on here. If you talk to evolutionary psychologists, they will tell you that our brains are still wired for the Stone Age, that we're still looking for these life-threatening, critical, precarious experiences that give us a sense of fitness in the face of danger, that make us feel come alive. However, we have all but banned them from our modern domesticated societies. They're not as dangerous anymore, thank God. But we need these precarious experiences to experience meaning. So what do? We create surrogate experiences. We go bungee jumping, we run ultra marathons, we go skydiving, or we go to IKEA. IKEA has perfected the art of making its customers suffer a little. It has perfected the art of frustration, right? If you're like me and you try to self-assemble a Billy Oslo clip-on Boris piece of furniture, it's a reminder of your own existential incompetence. And the same principle of frustration, by the way, is also at play in all customer loyalty programs. Take frequent flyer miles. Do you ever cash them in fully? They're never about instant gratification. They're all about delayed gratification, permanent unfulfillment. A very romantic principle indeed. Now, we can't talk about suffering without featuring one group of people that is very good at that, and that's the football fan.
La penjarà Neymar, apareix Sergi Roberto!
This goes on for another 5 minutes, but we don't have enough time, unfortunately. I watch this 4 times a day just because it makes me so happy. Barca's epic 6-1 victory over Paris Saint-Germain for the football fans among you. So what I find interesting about this video is, first of all, as long as we're able to experience that amount of passion, we don't have to be worried about robots. And then he will begin to cry very soon. And then secondly, the other thing that's interesting is, yeah, okay, sorry. Back to me. The second thing that's really interesting about it is I think the true football fan, of course, wants their team to win, but something else is really interesting about football, which is for the football fan, it's also important how the team wins. And also, by the way, how the team loses, right? Fandom is formed in defeat. And that's very different from the way we grow up in business, because in business we're always conditioned to win. We are members of the winners take all society. I wish I had read one of these books. But I would argue that in the future we're all going to be losers. We're all going to be losing. We're going to lose the stability, the continuity of traditional employment. We're going to lose control over our brand, over our narrative. We're going to lose authority. We're going to lose perhaps stability, identity. We're going to enter and exit relationships much more frequently. We're going to transition between different cultures and identities much faster. And we need rituals and practices and emotional agility to help us do so. We not only need to become better at starting and starting up, but also at ending. And that reminds me, I'm coming to the end now. These 3 principles, do the unnecessary, create intimacy, and suffer a little. In my opinion, they mark a broader cultural shift away from the smart, connected, data-driven age to a new romantic era, where a different set of qualities are becoming important. Wandering instead of reacting in real time. Deep connection instead of connectivity. Big intuition instead of big data. Mystery instead of radical transparency. Frustration instead of user-friendliness. Significance and meaning instead of excellence and efficiency. And yes, in case you wondered, there is an ROI of romance. First, innovation. If you don't have romantics in your organization, fools who see the world as it is not, but could be, then you're not going to be truly innovative. Second, customers and employees. If you want customers and employees who fall in love with you again and again and again and again, you have to give them more than just solutions to problems. You have to give them a sense of drama, intrigue, and romance. And the third benefit is that I believe it's exactly those romantic qualities that are inherently human. They're going to be the fabric of professions and tasks and jobs that will thrive in the future in an age of machines. Empathy, intuition, agility, imagination. That's the sweet spot for our human work, for our beautiful human work in the future. But the ultimate ROI of romance, for me as a romantic, is not economic. It's very simple. More romance. And that's really important because we live in this strange age of dissonance. On the one hand, we're more connected than ever before, but we're also lonelier. We're drowning in an abundance of data and information, but the prevailing sentiment of our time is one of loss. We're losing control, maybe our story, maybe even our human agency in light of AI. And this is why it's so important that we create and nurture brands and organizations that are like gardens, not machines, that value, again, what we cannot measure, that create products, services, and business models that are not only more useful, but also more beautiful. And I'm not only a romantic, I'm also an optimist. I believe if we combine exponential technologies such as AI, with those inherently, uniquely human qualities that for me are romantic qualities, that then perhaps we can not only be exponentially more productive and exponentially more efficient, but perhaps just a little bit more human. And that is a vision for the future of work and the vision for the future of our societies that hopefully not only a romantic like me can subscribe to. Thank you very much.